Hello and welcome to episode 158 of Super Switch Headz, the premier Nintendo podcast on all of the internet. My name is Patrick Nisley.
My name is Matthew Stoner.
My name is David Howe, and boy, oh boy, ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest joining us on tonight's episode. Mr. Matt Shirley has joined the podcast. How's it going, Matt?
Oh, it's great. It's great. Thank you very much for having me.
Of course, of course.
Two Matts.
Very happy to be here.
Yeah.
Two Matts. Better than one.
Two fairies.
It's gonna be hectic. Anytime we say Matt, who?
I
Me?
think that's
Who?
not the first time Matt Stoner and I have been in that situation.
How about this? We'll refer to Matt as Matt, and we'll refer to you, Matt, as Ma.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, because there's definitely not another name for Matt that would be like easier to distinguish.
Figure it out.
Well, Matt, Shirley, you are here to talk with us about subscriptions and in particular things, the sort of Netflix of gaming type subscriptions that we have now with Game Pass and that sort of thing. There's been a lot of it in the news this past week, which we'll talk about in the news section. But we're going to get into sort of that whole discussion about, the history of it and what the future of it might be. And maybe we'll speculate about, Nintendo and what they might do in the future as well. And we got a lot of great news and video game news and rumors to go over. Breath of the Wild 2 got some news. Maybe not the news people wanted to hear, but got some. We got new NSO games, unexpected ones that were announced, as well as some news about E3 and some other things. And we'll get into all that. But before we talk about anything specific like that, how's everybody doing? How has your week been?
It's okay. Yeah. Had some fun this weekend. There was a lot of stuff at the comedy theater that we do stuff at. Fallout Theater had kind of a celebration weekend for like an anniversary weekend. So that was kind of fun. Got to do a little bit of socializing. Didn't catch any COVID as far as I'm aware, which is good to know. And then also I saw a great movie this weekend. Everything Everywhere All at Once. I caught at the Alamo Drafthouse on Saturday. Just went by myself and saw that movie. 10 out of 10, dude. That is got to be one of the best movies I've ever seen. I really recommend it. Everybody go see that movie. It's an incredible film. It's like a once in a lifetime movie. You will not be disappointed if you go check it out. Hilarious. And it made me cry. Great. And it's a multiverse movie. You got to love it.
I've heard great things.
It's excellent.
I also went to the movies, but I saw a movie called Morbius.
Oh, no. You saw the wrong movie, Matt.
I guess I did. I got the wrong ticket. I stepped into it, but that's the power of the vampire. You invite him in and he invites you to the movie theater.
So would you say that Morbius is a 10 out of 10 once in a lifetime experience?
It's a shit movie. And very funny. I laughed many, many times, but unintentionally. I don't think the director or the writer intended that. But it made a lot of money, which is very confusing.
Yeah.
You couldn't pay me to watch a Jared Leto vampire movie.
Are you sure?
Yeah. No, I've discussed it. I've been given figures and I've turned them all down.
$25. Oh.
No. Yeah.
I didn't see a movie this weekend, so there you go. But I saw a lot of family, and I saw y'all on speaking of, I think we were talking about this before recording, but seeing people you haven't seen in person in a while, Matthew Stoner, I saw you.
Yeah, I saw you too. I was there.
Yeah, it was nice to have a little IRL table bar meet with the three of us. That's
we talked some business.
Yeah,
and the future of Super Switch Headz, which is things are looking bright. So more to come later.
Got to wear shades.
Yeah.
Does that mean we're going to have a Switch Headz 64 coming along?
That's right. The next generation of Switch Headz is upon us, and you can move around in 3D. Yeah, Matt Shirley, what about you? How was your past week?
It has been phenomenal. So I actually started a new job today. It was the first day.
Wow.
And totally went fine. But prior to that, I had 3 weeks off work, and I very intentionally did nothing except sleep and play video games. And okay, maybe a little more than those two items, but that was the focus. I just had some downtime and really got recharged and all that. Played a lot of video games. This is more of like a 3-week recap. Bought a gaming PC a while ago, so
Nice.
been delving into that. Been working. Patrick and I think talked about this in the Discord a little bit. Been getting into like some video game creation stuff as well, which is really fascinating and fun to work on.
Hell yeah. Yeah, speaking of Patrick,
Yeah.
your Game Jam game released.
I guess I'll take
correct?
this moment to plug that. Yeah. I did a visual novel game jam over the course of March. And so between the last episode and this one, that ended. And everybody, if you have 20, 30 minutes, I would love to, get feedback and that sort of thing, because it's a project that I may return to and expand on. Real easy to get to it. You go to pdyx.itch.io, and it's the one, I have a few text games on there as well, but the one called Source. Everybody check it out if you have a chance. I'd appreciate it, and send me a note.
Yeah, for sure. I have to say, I need to go back and play it again. I was playing it on my phone on mobile.
Did that work? I don't think it really works.
So kind of. So there's no keyboard entry. So my name was blank. And then whenever I answered a text, the game just disappeared. So I have to go back and replay it on PC. But what I played so far, I really enjoyed. I got about halfway through the meeting, in the break room, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. So
Spoilers,
there you go. Play it. It's a browser based thing right now, and it works best if you play it on a PC or a Mac. I think it might work okay on a tablet, but you got to expand it to full screen to not have some potential problems as well.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, it's great. I love the writing, Patrick.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Yeah. So last week we talked about Kirby and the Forgotten Land, which was a great episode. And we got some great comments from listeners and viewers, as always. In the Discord, Steve Irwin and Carosetta kind of echoed some of my comments about co-op and playing with their kid and some of the frustrations of that. Mm-hmm. Super fun because we had somebody join the Discord, Wildface, just to ask a question about what we were saying on the podcast. I think we talk about Meow Wolf so much on here that we stop explaining what it is. And last week we were like, oh yeah, Meow Wolf. And they were like, what are they saying? I've listened a bunch of times. So thanks for stopping by.
Meow Wolf.
Thanks for stopping by, Wildface.
Is that like a new Pokemon or something?
yeah, it sounds like, or a Kirby character.
I think it's a Digimon.
Yeah, Wolfamon.
Just great discussion on the Discord, as always, about Kirby and about copy abilities and stuff like that. But speaking of copy abilities on YouTube, Dylan Musk left us a comment that they felt like one of the big problems with the game is not enough copy abilities, and how that even though there's this mouthful mode, it's fun, but it doesn't have the depth to make up for the limited number of copy abilities, which I think is fair.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I am impressed by the upgraded copy abilities, though.
Yeah, I think that's what they leaned into, this tier thing. But yeah,
I think for me, it's like if I could have seen anything, it would have been that kind of combining abilities that you get in a few other Kirby games. I feel like this game could have really used that. As far as I'm concerned,
would have been a great way to incorporate co-op too.
Yep, absolutely.
In a better way, but whatever. I still think it's a great game. I don't know if this is where we want to talk about it, or maybe games we've been playing, maybe to give our updated thoughts on that makes more sense. But so we'd love to hear from our listeners. So please do write us if you have any thoughts on anything we talk about. We also appreciate it if you would leave a review somewhere online, like Apple or Spotify, or share the podcast on a place like Reddit. And also remember to like and subscribe on YouTube. Yeah, thumbs up. And we're going to get into the news and rumors for the week. So we'll start off with one of the big things that happened in the last week, which I think even maybe happened. It definitely happened after we recorded, but before we released, because we had a nice visit from our friend David from the future.
Yeah, that's
right. Breath of the Wild 2, or whatever we want to call it, the sequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2, has been delayed. There's a lot of people have been expecting this, right?
I hate to join the chorus of I told you so's, but we did discuss this as soon as they announced the release date for the new Pokemon game, that this seemed like all but an inevitability.
So they put out a short video where Aonuma comes up and says, sorry, but we're going to delay the game. We'd previously been targeting 2022, but we're now targeting spring 2023. Right? Didn't they say spring 2023?
Yeah.
Like that's the window. So what is that? Do y'all take that to mean like that probably means late March at the earliest?
I'd say fall 2024 at this point. That's what we can expect.
I mean, the original Breath of the Wild was delayed at least 2 years from its original release date.
This one too, then, right? I mean,
I think every Zelda game, with the exception of the first one and A Link to the Past, have been delayed from their initial.
Maybe Majora's Mask.
Yeah, Majora's Mask as well. Yeah.
Oh, really? Even though it was pretty short,
Yeah.
Something I reminded myself about is, Majora's Mask came out like less than 18 months after Ocarina of Time. It is just an astonishingly short window of time.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's what they were meant to do with this, right? I think the whole idea originally was that this game,
DLC.
and this isn't speculation. They told us this, is that this game started as DLC for Breath of the Wild. And then they were like, oh, okay, well, we're going to turn it into a sequel. And because we want to expand it, but it's going to take less development time because we're reusing assets and all that kind of stuff. And now I think this is the 3D Zelda game with the longest development cycle that has ever been. So it's
some of that surely impacted by COVID.
For sure.
But still, a long time. If you really believe that they started working on the DLC when it released, right? Then if it comes out late March, then that's 6-ish years, right?
Wow.
Longer than Breath of the Wild's development. Yeah.
I think the language in this video is super interesting because they didn't say they're delaying it. They said they are extending the development timeline and they're providing a launch timing update.
Yeah, and I've heard somebody argue that they never said they were going to release it. They've always been very specific in their wording about we're targeting a 2022 release and stuff like that. Where I don't know, they've put that date up on the screen, so it seems a little.
Yeah, I'm sure Nintendo has like their delay language down to a science at this point. I also want to just throw out the flurry of news articles that got written about the 3 seconds of new footage in the video, just to show how rabid that fan base is.
If you don't show us anything other than little morsels, we're gonna pick apart what we get.
Yeah,
we gotta suck all the meat off that bone.
Yeah, to explain the 3 seconds of new footage, they showed a lot of the same footage we've seen of sort of Link in the sky and falling and going through things and that sort of thing. But they, in addition to a verbal kind of thing that Aonuma said as well, which is that you're going to explore the sky. And then he said something, and I don't remember, I'm paraphrasing here, like, and more or something like that. So people took that as speculation of going underground because of the previous trailers as well. And then, they showed Link sort of holding up what looks to be the Master Sword, but it's broken and sort of corrupted, like his arm is corrupted, as we've seen.
With those yassified nails he's got on that Ganon arm. Yeah.
And shout out to KSBOKC on our Discord, because pretty quickly after this, talked about a lot of the rumors and kind of summarized them as being including things that this is now going to be a launch title for the next system. That Fi or Phi, however you prefer saying it, is going to play a significant role, and that there's going to be open areas in underworld and underwater in addition to the sky and the normal ground overworld. Are some of the speculated things based on this little bit of info we got. Anybody care to comment on any of that? Does any of that seem reasonable, or is this just?
Yeah, I was thinking about this the other day. I would say I would find it really surprising if they brought back something like Fi, because that's like a core gameplay mechanic of Skyward Sword, and
a controversial one at that.
Yeah, fair enough. But it's also just like that's really rare for them to do that. It's not like Wolf Link has ever returned except in kind of like a cameo way. There's never been like an adult child Link kind of set up since Ocarina of Time. Though just with the whole sky, like they're clearly going into the sky and bringing that back. So I'm sure you'd get kind of like massive amounts of like references to Skyward Sword. like similar, like Breath of the Wild had all kinds of references, like in the overworld map and all kinds of stuff like that. I could see something like bringing back like Loft Wings or something like that.
Yeah.
Similar how they brought like the Rito back in Breath of the Wild, which really surprised me at the time, and I thought was really cool because that was like really isolated to like the Wind Waker for me. But to see that just kind of bring into like the kind of standard Zelda pantheon, like next to Zora and Goron, was cool.
I think some of my favorite fan theories I've seen online just kind of involve where this takes place in the timeline. Because I don't know that they ever officially said in which of the three kind of canon timelines that Breath of the Wild takes place. And it's kind of always been speculated that it's at some sort of apex merging point of all the timelines, or that like whatever happens in any of the timelines, they all inevitably lead to the events of Breath of the Wild, right? So I do think that it's like you're laughing.
You just said all the theories.
I also
basically.
just feel like the timeline stuff is all
it's all just made up by fans that have nothing better to do. But I think it's like we do find ourselves at this point in media right now where the multiverse idea is like all over the fucking place. DC's doing it, Marvel's doing it, these like random A24 films are doing it, right? And it's like, I think if they're going to do something with Fee from Skyward Sword or some of the underground components of some of the other games, I think, like dungeons and stuff, I think that it could be a really cool opportunity to have like multiple iterations of Link kind of showing up in this game. I think that it would certainly account for a bigger scope and a longer development time, COVID notwithstanding. So, I mean, obviously that's complete speculation. That's probably not going to happen. But, as long as we've only got 3 seconds of footage to drool over, we might as well run a little wild with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, just a little background on myself. My middle school and high school days spent a lot of time arguing about the Legend of Zelda timeline on internet message boards. So I'm well versed in all that stuff. And I would just say the reason it's so convoluted is because Nintendo doesn't care about it. Like they don't care about it, which is fine. Like each game works and stands on its own so well, but I don't know. I just would find it so weird if they, at any point, they were ever like, okay, the timeline is super important now, and we need to bring it all and merge it together. I was really surprised they did that Hyrule Historia timeline thing, which I own. It's awesome. It's great.
Yeah,
I love it. And I'm really bummed they haven't updated it since Breath of the Wild came out, because that'd be super cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Zelda timeline, I mean, that is just, oh man, that just seems always like a dead end to go down.
Well, we know at least this is taking place in the Breath of the Wild timeline.
For sure.
There you go.
And I like the idea. Somebody mentioned it earlier, and I don't know if it's like been established by Nintendo, but I like the idea that Breath of the Wild just like happened so distant in the future that everything else, like, it doesn't matter, right? It's like it doesn't matter. It's just at some point this all becomes legends, and it's just recurring over time, and blah 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 blah. Yeah, I really like that, just kind of I don't know, affectation to the series.
Mm.
Well, anything else from anybody on this one? Because this is theoretically a big one. Anybody disappointed or happy or like any feelings on that?
I'm glad we're continuing the trend of speculating on 3 seconds of new footage. It's my favorite. I love doing this.
Yeah.
So
to answer, it's disappointing. Of course it's disappointing. I wanted to play Breath of the Wild this year. I think everybody wanted to play Breath of the Wild this year. I think we all knew it wasn't going to happen, so it wasn't like heartbreaking, right? But it's like certainly disappointing. I think even with this pushback, and I think even with, like, let's say the Russia-Ukraine war continues on throughout the rest of this year. Like, let's say that we don't get Breath of the Wild or Advance Wars this year. I think notwithstanding, Nintendo already had such a packed year anyway that they're not going to be having any troubles with their holiday lineup, right? Regardless of, there are games that we don't even know are coming out that are certainly coming out at the end of this year, right? So I think, this getting pushed back to what I think March 5th was the day the original game came out. This upcoming March 5th is a Friday. So it would be a solid 6 years since the original game came out if they did release it on that day. So I think that would be apt. And
I'd just say, I can't remember, this got released like a couple days ago. I every time I think about it, I just think there was a Hard Times article from a while ago that was like, Nintendo announces new Direct announcing that you can replay Breath of the Wild anytime you want, which is what I've been thinking about. It's like, first one still holds up. You can go back. Actually, like when the Skyward Sword remake came out, I played about halfway through it and then just stopped, and I started playing Breath of the Wild on a new file again.
Fair enough. Well, we'll move on to the next news item, which is Kirby song, technically a arrangement of a Kirby song, won a Grammy. I didn't even know the Grammys happened. By the way, I guess they happened this past weekend. So the Grammys happened, if you didn't know, like me, and a video game rearranged or arrangement won. I guess it's by a group called the 8-Bit Big Band, which is like an orchestra that puts on, sort of new arrangements of video game music. And Kirby Superstar, or sorry, Meta Knight's Revenge from the game Kirby Superstar won an award. The best instrumental or a cappella song, is that what it is? I think it's like an arrangement award. It's like they won best arrangement, essentially. Of a previously existing song. Got it. So that's cool and somewhat timely as well, with the brand new Kirby game out, which has great music. I think the new Kirby game's music is particularly good, but whatever. That's a discussion into itself. We'll talk about that later in the episode. But I just think it's funny that Kirby has now won Grammy and BTS has won 0. To be funny. Snubbed. Yeah.
It's funny you bring that up. I had a very thorough introduction to K-pop over the weekend.
Oh yeah. Kirby's better than all K-pop.
That was the thesis of the conversation.
Wait, look, we're don't come at us, K-pop stands. The 8-Bit Big Band, don't sleep on them, by the way. Like, this award is well deserved. It's not even my favorite arrangement on the album that it's from, but they've been putting out great stuff for a while now. They've got like 3 albums out. You can listen to on Spotify or Bandcamp or wherever you listen to music. Great stuff, and it's nice to see video game music actually get recognized at this national scale.
I watched the Grammys just as a side note, just a little bit. And the standout performance to me, there were many. BTS played. They played Butter, and their performance was great. But also Jon Batiste played. Yeah. Jon Batiste's performance on the Grammys was like, I am already a big fan of Jon Batiste as a musician and as a person. But his performance in the Grammys is like mind-numbingly beautiful and just wonderful and joyful. So you owe it to yourself to see that.
Did anybody slap anybody? Because that's partly why I didn't hear about the Grammys, I guess, because nobody slapped anybody.
There was no violence, so you didn't hear about it.
Will Smith showed up just to slap Jon Batiste. He won his award. Now, also a gamer, by the way, Jon Batiste. He was on the original Sonic the Movie soundtrack, and
that's right. Yeah,
he plays a lot of video game tunes on the Colbert's show.
That's awesome.
Moving on, we got some new games as part of the subscription service that Nintendo currently has, the Nintendo Switch Online that you can subscribe to, where you can play some classic games. This is the first sort of out of the blue update in a while, because we've had some sort of previously announced Nintendo 64 games that are still theoretically rolling out. We've got another few months of that, a few more that we're missing, but kind of out of nowhere the other night, they said that there are 3 new games coming. And on first glance of this, I was like, whoa, this is a pretty good update. We're getting Dig Dug, Earthworm Jim, and Mappy. And then a little bit closer inspection revealed we're getting Dig Dug 2, Earthworm Jim 2, and Mappy Land. So these are all sequels to games which aren't on the NSO service.
As you do.
As you do.
It's like an April Fool's joke.
Totally makes sense to do it this way. So I don't know if I feel the same way. I'm not saying any of these games are bad. I just was thinking that these were all the first games. Like I don't know that I've ever played Dig Dug 2. I think it's a slightly different style of game than Dig Dug. I might have played Earthworm Jim 2, but I know I played the first one, and I know we've had discussions about Mappy, but I don't know if we've had discussions about Mappy Land. Any thoughts on these games or this announcement?
I mean, main thing is the Japanese NSO got Harvest Moon instead of Earthworm Jim 2. And there is, there's a localization of that game. Obviously, it was a very popular game on the Super Nintendo. So it's a little disappointing. I mean, Earthworm Jim is fine. I just don't think that game probably holds up as well as the original Harvest Moon does. So that's a little disappointing. But
yeah, it's just strange to me whenever these sequels get added. I'm guessing that these sequels aren't as highly sought after, and so maybe they're easier to negotiate for, cheaper for Nintendo to throw them up there. I don't know.
Well, a lot of times sequels are better than the originals. Donkey Kong Country 2 is the better game than Donkey Kong Country, even though the first one's amazing. If I had to pick between having those two games, between one or the other, I would ask for Donkey Kong Country 2, so it might just be a situation like that.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with the Mappy franchise, so I can't speak to the quality of Mappy Land.
Yeah, I've not played any of these games, just to throw that out there. Though they don't strike me necessarily as like the most narratively dense games. Like you can probably get through, right?
Yeah, we got Earthbound for that.
Yeah. Matthew, have you ever played Mappy Land?
No.
Okay.
I can offer no opinion to Mappy Land.
If you're out there listening and you have thoughts on these, let us know. But yeah, these games are now available.
One thing to do is definitely follow that. There's like a Switch server maintenance account. It's like a bot on Twitter that says when certain apps are getting updates. And if you followed that, you knew well ahead of time that these games were showing up. Not these in particular, but that new NES and Super NES games were showing up. Everybody was saying like, oh, that doesn't mean they're actually coming. And then they did come like 24 hours later. So if you want to have early news on when stuff is going to be coming out, follow that Twitter account.
There's a note here too, which I did not realize that there are, they put out these SP versions, the special or whatever that stands for, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Where you can kind of cheat. They usually have sort of the end of the game loaded up in a lot of them, or like all your items are maxed out, that kind of thing, to make older difficult games you can see the ending. I guess they added a few of those as well.
Yeah, there's Super Punch Out and Super Mario World got versions as well. It's like whenever you beat all the exits on Mario World, and it kind of changes the graphics of some of the enemies and stuff.
And all the sprites are super weird.
Yeah, it's that unlocked trippy right off the bat. Yeah,
nice.
One speculation, just talking about Earthworm Jim just a little bit. If y'all remember, go back to November 2021, they announced Earthworm Jim, the television show.
Mm-hmm.
So this is likely this version on NSO will probably be one version of many that might come to other subscription services in support of the upcoming Earthworm Jim television show. That's just speculation, but
could be advertisement for the Intellivision Amico that's coming out, which is getting a new Earthworm Jim game.
Yeah, a new Earthworm Jim 4 or whatever.
Yeah. Tommy Tallarico strikes again.
Yeah, I read that they stopped the pre-orders on those, like Best Buy.
Yeah, I don't know. It looks like a very geriatric device to me.
I kind of
looks like a CPAP machine.
Yeah, it does. Help you fall asleep at night. I just want one to like look at it and be like, my life isn't so bad.
I was just reading like the Wikipedia article the other week or whatever about just like all those like 90s consoles that you just never think about.
Oh,
just like the is it like the Atari Jaguar or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the controllers always just look so wonky on them.
Oh yeah.
Moving on then, the Stanley Parable, the Ultra Deluxe Edition, which has been in development, slated to release at some point in the future for a while. Obviously, again, COVID could be involved. finally got a release date, and it's very soon. It's also coming to the Switch, among other platforms, but it's coming out in just a few weeks on April 27th. So if you have been following that or interested to check that out, you have your chance at the end of the month. I've never played Stanley Parable, and I've been kind of at this point thinking about maybe just waiting for this version.
This game's right up your alley, Patrick. You're gonna love it.
I'm surprised you haven't played it. I was going to ask if it was inspiration for a lot of your narrative writing.
No, I've heard about it, and I thankfully am relatively unspoiled. I think I have a general sense of it, but but not a lot of specifics, if you will.
Yeah. Shout out to my buddy Davey. That's his game.
Yeah. And then unfortunately / fortunately, Activision Blizzard is in the news again this week with a couple of things that have been happening. There was a settlement that happened a while back in one of the many lawsuits that Activision Blizzard is involved in particular, a sexual harassment one that was, I think, led by the EEOC. The settlement for $18 million was approved. So that means the settlement can go through, which, among other things, means, whoever has claims of that, related to that can get paid, which is great. But it also, maybe not so great, kind of gets rid of one of the problems that might be holding up the merger that's happening with Microsoft.
Yeah, and for somebody who just got $68.9 billion, $18 million that's quite a big chunk of that,
Yeah.
So those are just numbers at some point.
Yeah.
Meaningless.
No, it's a drop in the fucking
Unfathomable
bucket.
amount of
Yeah. Swept under the rug.
I was getting my mail today with my son, who's too young to understand money, and one of the pieces fell, and he grabbed it and picked it up because it says win $10,000. That's what would you do with all that money? And I'm like, yeah.
Get out of some debt, probably.
Not live for very long, Well, anyway, sorry to derail there. The other sort of thing that's happened, Matthew, maybe I'll let you talk about this one, because you shared this news piece that there's been some lawmakers kind of urging the FTC to look into this, right? The merger, that is, between Activision and Microsoft.
Yeah. I think it's about 4 U.S. senators are asking the FTC to investigate the acquisition of Microsoft purchasing Activision Blizzard. So it's like Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Cory Booker, and someone else I can't think of.
White House, whoever that is. I don't know them very well.
House,
Sheldon Whitehouse.
Yeah, Sheldon Whitehouse. Yeah. Just to kind of using the previous conversation point of like the history of sexual harassment and how it crosses over to all of that drama caused Microsoft to purchase it because it tanked their stock and how they're related. So it's not only about possibly antitrust issues in the video game industry, but also just how a big company comes in and swoops in to buy another company when they're hurting, for better or for worse, and kind of what that looks like. Personally, I'm a big fan of this. I think we're long overdue for antitrust cases in this country, with big tech kind of growing larger and larger, and having more and more vertical integration. I'm a big fan of this regulation in general to protect the average consumer. So we'll see if this goes anywhere.
I didn't realize that Elizabeth Warren was a PlayStation Call of Duty player.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. She plays all the time. She loves Warzone.
She's like, I am not getting an Xbox. Okay.
She's so obnoxious on the mic, too. She throws shade. I was going to throw out there on maybe a better note, but still kind of like in the real world news. The Amazon facility in Staten Island voted to unionize over the weekend. Which not directly gaming related, but I think Amazon just has such a shadow over all of tech that it's worth throwing out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Starbucks unionization efforts have been going pretty well, somewhat as well, or been happening.
Yeah, there's a local branch here in Austin, and I think one in San Antonio as well that's been unionized.
That's right. I think it's the era of work. We're entering a new era of workers' rights. You can only hope. Yeah.
Fingers crossed. Moving on. So there's been a lot of talk about E3 not happening this year because I think a while back they even confirmed that there would not be an in-person event, but now it is clear that they've even come forward that there is not going to be a digital event this year. So E3 2022 will not happen. No E3.
That sucks.
2022.
That's my editorialization.
There was no E3 in 2020. And there was a digital one last year. And I feel like when that happened, I feel like after criticizing E3 in 2019 and 2020, we were all kind of like, we're glad it's back, even if it's weird and digital. So I don't know. We've talked about this a lot. We've had maybe even multiple episodes on related topic, but this definitely feels like the death knell to me of E3. Like,
I don't know if they come back from this. Yeah. They say in the press conference, we're excited to do an in-person E3 in 2023 with a new revamped blah, 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 blah. But it's like, can they survive a hit like this? You know, it's pretty devastating. Although, I can't imagine they made any money off of E3 in 2021, right?
Yeah.
So
I would just jump in there because I don't know anything about this news story. I don't know any drama about E3 or why this happened. So I'm just curious, like, what's a summary? Like, what is the factors behind that? Because at this point, it can't just be COVID.
They haven't really specified, right? They said it was because of COVID concerns, right? But yeah, you're right. It can't just be because of that. We've kind of speculated in the Discord. Obviously, there are some logistical issues that they're having putting together a digital event. But I'd have to think that it's probably a lack of support from the power players that usually are the ones that bankroll their operations, right? I think that the beginning of the end for E3 was Sony dropping out, right? Like, Sony was a huge part of all E3s ever since their inception. And so, even before COVID that happened, right? And so I think that if COVID hadn't happened, I think that the ESA could have survived that blow and worked their way back up. They were doing that with opening it up to the public. They were doing all these different things. Then obviously COVID dealt a huge blow to the way that they had just restructured E3 into a fan event, right? And so they've just been dealt hit after hit. And I don't know. I guess I think that they probably just weren't getting the money that they needed from the third parties and the publishers.
So it kind of just outlived its usefulness. Like, all those big backers, like, they, Nintendo does their directs and everything. It's like they can get at this point, they can get out, a better connection to the media and to the fans.
I think there might be two things. One is that they decided not to have an in-person when there was a huge surge, in January. And so they decided that wasn't safe or would be a bit, better to cut it now. And then from what I've read on IGN, who knows how reliable this is. They say they have some sources that say that it just kind of sound like the discussions around it were kind of fraught and like nobody making a decision and a lot of silence that made everybody frustrated. So just kind of sounds like they weren't ready to do a digital only, maybe after they canceled the in-person and weren't ready to make that decision. And are they, like David said, regrouping to try to make it come back in 2023, which may work. I don't know. We'll see.
I hope so, but I'm not. Yeah. It's like how I hoped I would play Breath of the Wild 2 this year, but I knew in my heart it wasn't going to happen.
I'm curious how this lack of trade show for ESA, like, what happens to them? They already spend so much time and money lobbying on behalf of the video game industry, and they have a child company like ESRB who rates all the video games. But if this is like a centralized piece, maybe this is how ESA makes some of their money. I wonder what this looks like for ESA long term, and what that means for the ESRB and a centralized lobbying arm for the whole industry.
Yeah.
You just get the feeling that the ESA is not well run based on the fact that there were those leaks of journalist info and some of the other bad press around E3, and the fact that they aren't able to have a clear path like in these last couple of years.
It seems like there's definitely a management problem.
Sorry, what were you gonna say, Matt?
Oh, I was just gonna say I'm gonna take a more positive note than y'all, and say I am thoroughly looking forward to the next Breath of the Wild 2 delay announcement at E3 2023.
Oh my god!
Yeah, it's not a delay; it's an update on the development timeline.
Yeah,
they were targeting.
Yeah,
yeah.
But hey, you know what? Good news. Summer Game Fest is coming back. Jeff Keighley took this moment to announce that his pet E3 replacement, Summer Game Fest, the amorphous online blob that is Summer Game Fest, will be starting in June.
That goes through like October or some shit?
Yeah, summer.
Ever the opportunist, Mr. Keighley.
I think probably this week on talking about E3 a little bit more, just to circle back just a bit, I was backing up a lot of my photos because I freaked out that I lost all my photos, but I didn't. But I found a lot of pictures from E3 back in like 2000. I don't know when I went, 2008, 2009. So I have this picture during the Tony Hawk Underground release where they have a whole half pipe inside of the convention center. It's just the absurdity. So if you want to see some old E3 pictures.
That's where Jeff Keighley did the 900, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. The first time that Jeff Keighley did it. Yeah, he did it at E3. Yeah. In a Spider-Man costume.
Yep. Yeah. Very famous moment in gaming.
All right. So we got a couple of news items this week related to our main topic, which are going to lead us into it, which are gaming subscription related. So there's been a lot of rumors of this and leaks and that sort of thing, but it officially was announced that PlayStation is going to roll out a new version, if you will, of PlayStation Plus, which I guess I have never actually subscribed to this, so y'all correct me if I'm wrong. It's like there was PlayStation Plus and PlayStation Now, correct?
Right.
And that's not going to be the case going forward. There are now going to be 3 tiers of this service, if you will, where there's going to be, depending on which tier you're subscribed to, you get access to, so much retro games and that sort of thing, and then cloud streaming of some games and some modern games, depending on your tier. Right? Is that how it works? Like the lowest tier maybe is just like you get a couple of games a month, and then
there's PlayStation Plus Essential, which is unchanged. That's PlayStation Plus as it currently is, where you get the 3 curated games a month that you own as long as you are subscribed to the service, right? As long as you claim them, right? And then there's PlayStation Plus Extra, which is a horrible name. And then that includes PS4 and I think some PS5 games in it as well. So that's kind of like a bit of a Game Pass. It's like a little bit of Game Pass in there.
And are those cloud based? Is that how that, or is that
no?
different?
So those are not cloud based. Those are all download, because they're all games that are playable on PS5 hardware and PS4 hardware, right? So as long as you have the hardware that supports it, as long as you're not trying to play a PS5 game on your PS4, those you just download those games. And then there's PlayStation Plus. I think it's Premium. Is that what it's called? And that one is the one that includes games from their back catalog of games. So it'll be PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, and Vita games. Or excuse me, PSP games, I believe. I don't think that Vita is included in this. Why would they? Sony pretends the Vita doesn't exist. But it's the PS3 games that will be streamed, and then potentially some PS1 and PS2 games. Although I don't know why they would, because I think you can download PS1 and PS2 games via PlayStation Now currently. So all it really is just rolling PlayStation Now into PlayStation Plus for essentially the same price and calling it PlayStation Plus instead of having two different names for it.
Gotcha. Well, what are your everybody's thoughts on this? I've heard a lot of people, at least when it first happened, say this isn't as good of a deal, but then I've heard some people say it was never going to be as good of a deal as Game Pass, and so it's still decent. I don't know. I guess we should say what, like the highest tier is $18 a month or $120 per year in the US. Does that strike you as reasonable for, however many? I think it's like 700 something games plus all these old games. Or
It
maybe
doesn't sound bad. I
games.
think Game Pass is $15 a month, so it's not a substantially different price.
Yeah, Game Pass ends up being more if you add up the monthly amount at a year version, right? But there's also lots of ways to get Game Pass for cheaper than $15 a month. Like currently there's still an offer available to buy Xbox Live Gold, which is only $60 a year, and convert that to a year of Game Pass.
Oh, well,
right?
I missed out on that. I got screwed.
Yeah, I bought I bought 3 years of Xbox Live Gold and converted it for that reason, right? And I mean, you could do stuff like that now. I mean, I think until June when this happens, you can stack a bunch of years of PlayStation Now, and that will all convert into this PlayStation Plus Premium, right? So there's definitely like ways around it, but I don't know. The streaming of the PS3 games for me is really unfortunate, I think. I wish that weren't the case. I wish that they had spent the time and money. The PlayStation 5 is more than capable of emulating PS3 games, whether they want to say it is or not. I know the PS3 is famously hard to emulate. It's built on very obscure, strange hardware that is difficult to emulate. But I mean, the Steam Deck can play PS3 games, and that's a lot less powerful than a PS5. So I think, I don't know. I wish that they had spent the actual time in order to get that up and running. I just think that streaming is not a good solution for that, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and there is a huge difference though between like porting something and emulating it. Like if it was a PS3 game that was ported to Windows or something, then
right,
yeah,
right. Which they don't need to do. I mean, they just need to build an emulator for the PlayStation. I mean, it'd be hard. They'd have to develop that. It would take development time, but I think it'd be worth it.
I'm sure they also have it already. Like I'm sure they have like Windows PS3 emulators in their dev kits and stuff.
Yeah. Then I'm very confused as to why they made this decision.
Well, the announcement says offers cloud streaming access for original PlayStation, PS2, PSP, and PS4 games offered in the extra and premium tiers. Does that mean? What does that mean?
That might,
you can stream or download those, but PS3 is only streaming, right?
Well, they're probably referring to PC. So with PlayStation Now currently, you can stream games to your PC, right?
Yeah,
so I imagine that is probably an additional option, right?
Yeah, it's like on top of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Because it does say, okay, you could stream or download.
Matt, what do you think about this?
I just think this is like, as we're trying to like understand the service, as Patrick, you're trying to ask questions about it. I'm just like, oh man, yeah, this isn't necessarily clear. Like, I can't just like look at a menu and tell me what's included. It's like, it includes these games, but it's streaming, but some of them are downloads and some aren't. But then it doesn't say which generations are missing either. So it only says what it's offering, but doesn't fill in the gaps of the things that you can't get on it, obviously. But I think these are just bullet lists on, Sony's blog or PlayStation blog or something, just to explain what it is. But I think all these services, they're so complex, and they require such intricate the kind of legalese of the things that they talk about, because some things are not available in all countries. I'm just looking at this list. It says where PlayStation Now is currently available. So, but PlayStation Now isn't available in some markets, and so that sounds like this service or these services, this extra and this
will
premium
also not be.
But it doesn't say they won't be available. It's just where PlayStation Now. So it's the wording is confusing naturally. So it's going to cause some consumer confusion too.
Yeah, and there is a bullet or a asterisk that says, for markets without cloud streaming, PlayStation Plus Deluxe will be offered. And that's like, wait, what's PlayStation Plus Deluxe? You know what I mean? Like,
well, it's just basically it without streaming. That's it, right? It's like, I think they said it would be at a discounted rate.
Yeah. It's just another name that in there that can, there's extra and deluxe and essential. And I don't know what those words mean. Yeah.
Yeah, this whole conversation just makes me really happy I'm not invested in Sony or PlayStation. That would be maddening to get through. Just in a little bit of a different direction. Just my day job, I'm a software engineer, and it still just blows my mind that this cloud gaming stuff is feasible and it works as smoothly as it does. Like I had Xbox Game Pass over the summer, and yeah, it was great. It was a phenomenal service. It was really enjoyable to play. It took me, I remember posting about it in the Discord at the time. It took me a while to get it up and running, but that's only because I was trying to bootleg it on like some subpar hardware. I did actually get it up
on a tablet or something, right?
So what I wanted to do is essentially I wanted to play it on a TV on an Android. I wanted to play it on a TV, and so I was trying to do it on an Android device hooked up to my TV.
I remember
which I eventually got working. But it took a while. But I did get it fully running. But in the process, so a really weird sidebar on all this is that so Microsoft is putting out all these, right? And they're you can get on Windows and Android and blah 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 blah. Probably a bunch of other stuff. Apple doesn't want it on their App Store. So for Microsoft to get it around that, they started compiling it to a web browser, so you can actually play it in your web browser.
Yeah.
Well, you could do it on anything,
okay.
Chrome or anything like that, and that also plays really well. Just surprisingly well, which is just again, it's just how far tech has come that you can play all that stuff in a browser. So when I was tinkering with it, I have a Raspberry Pi 4, and I actually got Game Pass to run in a browser on the Raspberry Pi 4 at on the lowest, like a 320 by 240 resolution. And I got it booted up and running, and I played a couple of Halo 2 matches, and I got at least one kill. It was very laggy, but I got at least one kill. I do remember that very clearly. But I could talk about my terrible Halo performance in general for a long time, but that was the impetus for getting all the Game Pass stuff. It's just when I was in high school, I really wanted to I didn't have.
You're like, I want to play that game on a Raspberry Pi 4.
That was a bit of a detour. I did actually get it booted on an actual Android device.
Yeah.
But when I was in high school, I wanted to be so good at Halo, and I just wasn't. And I never had an Xbox, but so anyways, it was just the kind of thing. It was the kind of thing where I'd go over to my friend's house and play, and I'd be really bad, and they'd get really mad at me for tanking the team. But it's like,
yeah,
what do you want me to do?
Well, I think, clearly, people are saying right now, and we'll get it. We've been going for a while now, and we haven't even really gotten into the actual meat of the topic here, which is about these subscription services. But I think there is a lot to be said about whether or not this is Sony's Game Pass, or whether they can even really do Game Pass, right? Because there are, I think one of the big things about Sony's subscription service here is that it's not going to have day one releases like Microsoft can do, right? Microsoft is like one of the biggest corporations in the world. They've got all this, trillions of dollars of valuation for their company. Sony can't afford that. The highest, the part of the Sony corporation that makes the most money is the gaming division. That's not, you can't say the same thing about Microsoft, right? They want to grow their gaming division to be a big major factor of what their money-making schemes are, right? And so a lot of these first-party PlayStation games, your Last of Us sequels, your God of War Ragnarok, all these games, they still want you to pay $70 for these games on launch, right? And I think they said that one of the games that we included this is like Returnal, and by the time this comes out, Returnal will have been like a year old, right? So that's kind of, so yes, I do think it is obviously a response to Game Pass, but it is also kind of, it's Game Pass as Sony is able to afford it. You know what I mean? They just don't have the Mary Poppins bag of pockets that Microsoft has as far as money is concerned.
Yeah, I'd also say this is just my impression, but my impression is Sony is just so much more of a consumer product company, whereas like Microsoft is pretty well regarded when it comes to like cloud computing in their Azure environment, similar to like Amazon has AWS. So it was probably a lot easier for them to get all of that running. They probably have a lot better tech talent internally to build all that stuff out.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we could talk about this before we even get to the beginning of the episode. It's just like, this is I think.
Oops, all news.
Yeah, this is just all news. Fuck segments. It's all blending together. I think it's only fair for us to compare between Game Pass and PlayStation Plus. But also the way I'm sure that Sony is thinking about it, and the way that these other companies like your Google, your Apple, what they're trying to do is offer services to their existing user base. And so they're gonna for those people who Sony has their claws in, they're just gonna take this claws and go dig deeper to squeeze out more money from that consumer, to offer more value for purchasing the console. And so some of these games are on PlayStation Plus, are available on PC, but it's overwhelmingly a console experience.
Sure.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that, I think too, like when you offer these tiers, I think you're trying to make it feel like a little bit of FOMO to sign up for the highest tier.
Yeah,
right?
why would you get the middle
it's
tier?
Only X more dollars to do that and that sort of thing. So yeah,
it's like a medium. You wouldn't buy a medium Coke at a movie theater, right? It's only 10 cents more for the large.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to talk more about this, but one last news item that I think we talked about, maybe not on the actual show, felt like a response to this, is that Windows Central, which is sort of the unofficial mouthpiece of Microsoft, has announced that Microsoft is going to have a Xbox Game Pass family plan. It's not officially announced yet, but it's, again, it seems like Windows Central kind of gets these exclusive news items.
It's Jez Gordon, right? Who leaked this? Yeah,
I don't know. That could be, but I guess we don't have enough details on like what this looks like, how many people, how much it's going to be, but it came out right around the same time as this other news, or right after. Is it 5? That we do have that news. 5, you're right, 5 players. But I guess the pricing isn't available yet.
That's correct. Yeah.
So
it certainly felt like a bit of a response, right?
Yeah, like if you were thinking about jumping ship.
Yeah. Exactly.
We're going to make it even cheaper.
It's like, probably. You did the math of 15 times 12 and found it to be a little bit more than 120. Well, have we got a deal for you?
So I'm sure we'll have more to say about that whenever they officially announce the pricing and that sort of thing. And then we'll all coordinate getting on family plans. But
yeah.
Well, I don't know if there's anything anybody wants to say about that, but I think we can hold it maybe, unless it's really specific to the family plan part. And we'll take a break, and when we come back, we'll talk more about gaming.
We'll take an absolutely arbitrary break between the last news segment and our main topic.
We're back, and we're talking about gaming subscription services this week. And to be clear, we are talking about these sort of new things like Game Pass or NSO, or this iteration of PlayStation Plus that's coming, where you pay a fee and you can play from a catalog of available games so long as you pay that fee. Not so much like a subscription-based game like a World of Warcraft or something like that, but this sort of grouped subscription of multiple games. And just real quickly, this stuff's been around forever. As far as video games, it's not, we don't think about it, but
since the time of Jesus,
since the wheel was invented, they had gaming subscriptions. No, but
Is that accurate?
Yeah, we're historians.
It is.
Well,
It is accurate.
it's a fact.
That was on the Rosetta Stone. Was multiple tiered pricing options. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, whenever Nintendo was a card company, you sign up and they'd mail you the card.
Yeah, you get one Hanafuda card every month, and then you have to build out a deck.
But the Mattel Intellivision back in 1980 had a sort of downloadable cartridge where you could, with a modem get games, and there were things like Satellaview and the Sega Channel, and that's what I meant by it's been around for a while. This idea of it, though, obviously those things, none of them really worked that great. And there were things like, I guess, GameFly still exists, right? Like this sort of subscription where you can get games shipped to you, or Redbox or whatever, I guess isn't really a subscription. So never mind. But GameFly is.
Which one was the Nintendo one? Was that Satellite View?
That's Satellaview,
Yeah,
right?
Satellaview. Okay.
Yeah. Of which we are getting, I think, the first Satellaview game ported to modern consoles is coming out this week with Radical Dreamers within the Chrono Cross remaster.
I read an article once about the tech, how all that works. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, it's okay.
But I was going to say the way the tech that worked is it hooked into your cable television, and they broadcast the games over the cable television. So you downloaded it over that, not like the internet, which is
weird.
Wild to think that they like came up with that as a transportation mechanism.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this stuff, a lot of the old school subscription online stuff we're talking about specifically was never really released here in the US. I mean, Sega Channel was here in the US, but like all the Nintendo stuff was not. And that's really because like Japan has always been like a lot tighter infrastructurally speaking. You know what I mean? And it's a smaller use case, a lot more homogenized throughout it. So it's like, we're finally at the point where it's now becoming like more of a global phenomenon than a strictly just Japan thing.
And then I think the sort of modern iteration of these subscriptions where it really kind of started is Xbox Live, which started in 2002. And I think you see this with Nintendo. A lot of this is tied up in a subscription for online gaming, right? For multiplayer gaming. And that's where it had its arguably this sort of modern version of it has its origins in that. And now we're seeing things like PlayStation Plus and now kind of merging and becoming this subscription thing. And so that's been the evolution we've had, right? Since then.
It's been a constant rumor since Game Pass was announced, but it's looking more and more likely every day that Xbox Live Gold itself is soon to be phased out and just built into Game Pass, which it pretty much already is, but they are still separate things that you can purchase at the moment.
Yeah. And the Nintendo one is that way too, right? Like now this Nintendo, which right before the Switch, did you ever have to pay to play online on Nintendo? I don't believe so, right? Mm-hmm. So the Switch broke that ground, and with it, they kind of merged a retro subscription.
Even like the first 2 years of the Switch, you didn't have to pay for online.
Really?
Basically, yeah. They were like, September this is coming at some point. Right? Yeah, exactly.
I didn't get my Switch until the pandemic. It was March or April 2020.
Well, so Xbox kind of broke the ground there on this, arguably, and then arguably also has sort of the best deal of this now with the Game Pass. But now there's a lot of these new competitors. So, we just talked about for a while, Sony having it. There's the other ones. There's Apple Arcade, Amazon, and Google have their cloud-based subscription services. Netflix now you can play games, and Netflix, didn't they just announce their first original game for it or something like that?
Yeah,
just this week actually. I think I read that somewhere. So yeah, I don't know where y'all want to start in talking about this. We've already kind of covered some of the news related to PlayStation, but maybe the question we could start with is this something you like? Or do we like? I mean, most people seem to be fans of Game Pass.
I would just say I was so skeptical for a very long time about the technology, about cloud gaming, just because of latency and all that. You think about latency and just multiplayer games in general, and then compound that where everything's over the cloud. But anyways, until I actually played it. And Game Pass is just it was a super solid experience for me once I got down to it. So
yeah, I think it's, obviously it's to each their own, right? Like I'm really not a big fan of the whole cloud gaming thing. I've got a good internet connection, but it's not consistent enough to me to where I find it to be an enjoyable experience. But I think even if you take cloud gaming out of the equation for Xbox, Game Pass is a very good deal if you're just going by numbers, right? I think the question that you have to ask yourself is this idea of ownership, right? We've had this conversation before just with digital games in general, right? On like, do I really own a digital game? If the Xbox store goes down and I bought a game digitally, am I just doomed to never be able to play that game in like 10 years or whatever, right? I think you add in subscription services on top of that, and that obviously takes even that degree of ownership out of it, right? And I think that's like where a lot of people have issues with these kinds of services. It's the idea that it's like, oh, if I stop paying, I just won't have access to anything anymore.
I want to say, and y'all correct me if I'm wrong here, but NVIDIA has a streaming service, and I believe their model is a little bit different, where you actually load games that you have previously purchased off of possibly Steam or something like that onto their cloud environment, and then you play the games that you own. So it's a little bit of a twist on that.
Yeah, there's so they have the GeForce experience, which allows they create the infrastructure where you can like play the game on your Steam game on your PC, but stream it to your smartphone or something like that. But they also have a subscription service as well, as that you can pay. You pay NVIDIA to have access to this library of games too.
Okay, right. I mean, that's what Stadia is, right? Stadia isn't really. There's a subscription service that comes with its own things, but then it's also bespoke games that you buy. It's Amazon Luna, I believe, that is way more just like, that's a library of games like Game Pass, right? It's a library of games like PlayStation Now and something like that. And I think that's that. I mean, and Nintendo has that too now, right? Yeah. Nintendo's stuff is all exclusively retro games, though, and that's kind of like where the big difference is between what Nintendo's doing and everybody else.
Which I still think is just a great deal. And it really surprised me that Nintendo did that, just because it always seemed like they were really trying to cash in with their historical intellectual property. You know, it's like on the virtual console, like you could buy an N64 game for like $20. You know what I mean? It's just like ridiculously overpriced on like the Wii virtual console, but like the NSO, I thought it's a pretty great deal to get like $20 a year and get all those classic games.
I think that's a sign of this taking over, right? That Nintendo felt like they needed that, like, and I think David's question is really good, and I think we should maybe focus on that. But real briefly to that point, like, I think that this is a moneymaker for these companies, right? Like, and I think this is happening beyond games to everything, right? Like, you used to be able to, I don't know, I feel like buy software, like, and now it's all moved towards licensing for a certain amount of time, right? Like, so if I want to buy some, I don't know, video editing software or something, a lot of them now aren't purchasable. They're purchasable for a year or whatever. And I think games is headed that way too, whether we like it or not.
Right.
And I think that's kind of what you were saying, David, is like one of the questions is ownership. And does subscription services taking over kill buying video games like Napster killed buying music a little bit? It's different because you're now paying money to access them, and so theoretically money is trickling down. But does this kind of potentially have that same effect of like making it harder for, because right now it feels like video games are still a very viable, there's such a big market share of people, or does this make me also increase microtransactions and stuff like that? Or
right, that's a good question as well.
And other more sinister, quote unquote, pricing schemes. I
think we're several years away, but I think at some point, if we ever go all digital, or the physical supply of video games released in stores or online, if that ever happens, then the full transition will be complete.
Yeah.
Well, you're already starting to see that with consoles like the Xbox Series S, having no, having no physical, what do you call it?
Disc holder.
Yeah, there's no
a
optical
CD
drive.
tray.
Yeah. I think also you're starting to see a little bit of that more nefarious. Okay, yeah, well, we'll give these to you with your subscription, right? But look no further than the new Halo game, right? I mean, like the new Halo game came out, and it's free to play, really, but it's loaded with microtransactions. It's more of a live service type game, right? And I do worry that a move to subscription services pushes us even further into that category of games, right? Like the kind of nickel and diming sort of games.
I think it's gonna happen. I think it is happening. I think, it's somewhat inevitable. What exact shape it takes, I guess, is what's being fought right now on between all these companies, and maybe the ideal situation is we end up with a few different ones, and like Apple Arcade allows a certain kind of games to flourish, and Game Pass allows certain kind of games to flourish, and people still make money because of that. I don't know. I'm kind of spitballing. I don't have a fully formed thought here. Does that make sense?
I'm thinking of kind of like the negative example being like Spotify, where Spotify is notorious for really underpaying artists.
Mm-hmm.
The business model is a little bit different in gaming because you don't have a ton of like independent bands trying to get on there. But it could just be like just lead to more like kind of just cutthroat industry practices and just like chasing smaller and smaller profit margins and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And I do think there are a lot of indie developers that might lose out to have that, connect directly more with Spotify, right? That like maybe Game Pass only wants big tier games because that's what sells it. And I don't know, or whatever.
I don't know about that. I mean, I think that the comparison is apt, but I think it's a little different because Spotify pays on a per stream basis, right? You get paid as an artist, and it's nothing, it's fucking peanuts, right? But you get paid per stream, essentially, where Microsoft pays a lump sum at the top in order to get you onto their Game Pass service. Doesn't matter how many people download it. You know what I mean? It's how much you're willing to negotiate for your game to be on the service, right? Now, I think that we won't see indie games go anywhere as far as Game Pass is concerned because they're going to be the easier ones to purchase for Microsoft, right? They're cheaper than like a big AAA game. I think Guardians of the Galaxy, they said it was something like at least $10 million or something that they paid for that to go up, or maybe it was higher than that, which actually seems kind of low, to be honest. If you think about how many potential sales you could have had, but yeah, so I think that it's similar, right? But I think that it could be like, I think you're onto something there, Matt Shirley, where it's like, as competition drives down the price of different things, right? I think that PlayStation Plus, this streaming service or this subscription service that they're putting out, I think that that's kind of forced Microsoft's hand to even increase the value more, which is why they're doing this family plan thing. And at some point, somebody's going to make off with less money. And I think it is going to be the developers and the publishers, right?
Well, I think why I wouldn't necessarily be worried about indie game developers is because it doesn't harm their distribution methods, right? Like, as long as there's an audience out there of people willing to pay $5, $10, $20 for an indie game, they have the hardware to run it, right? Like you can play it on your phone, you can play it on your computer, you can play it on your console, you can play it anywhere. So there's not really like a barrier to entry as far as that. The only thing I would see harming the indie game developers is if the actual market changed and people didn't want to buy those individual games and those $5, $10, $20 games.
Yeah. Or like, why would I buy this if this is inevitably going to show up on a subscription service?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Because then, or if they expect it to be on the streaming services, because then that would give the streaming providers, they could squeeze out those indie developers who don't have as much kind of leverage negotiating that stuff.
And I'm not trying to paint this all as dystopian, but like the other possibilities that it might be worrisome that are analogous to the Spotify thing is like Spotify seems to want to drive people now to its own podcasts and things, right? As opposed to things where it has to pay people.
Sure.
And as Microsoft acquires more companies and has more of its own big games, does it try to drive people to that and feel like, or
they
like
have to actually release games in order to do that. So.
Or like the Netflix comparison where they're trying to drive people to their produced shows,
sure,
so that they don't have to pay for other things to make people think that that's enough and only subscribe to, you know what I mean? I think there might
that
be
already seems to be Sony's playbook, right?
Yeah.
Like it seems like the majority of stuff that we're going to be seeing on their platforms is more their own. But I mean, also there's a lot we don't know about Sony's service yet. Yeah.
I think it really does feel like this news this week feels like we're headed there, and you know, the expansion pack on Nintendo and these tiers, you know, we're seeing more and more of, and across, like, you know, outside of gaming, we're seeing more and more of this. So it really seems like this is the future, and I don't know how I feel about it.
Yeah, I'm just thinking through a few examples of how, like we've talked about how it affects the developer. Maybe we could just talk a little bit about how it affects the average consumer, like well into the future. I'm thinking something like as using the Netflix model, as people are invested already with Netflix, they already have an account and they're increasing the value of that service. Then I wonder if we'll get to some point where Microsoft will wholesale buy an exclusive third-party indie game that is only available on Game Pass, and then it kind of locks out the rest of the consumers. The first example, this is not true, but like they just released the new the Monkey Island. Is that the...
Yeah, that's just big news that just broke. We didn't talk about, but yeah.
So let's say they, you know, Devolver Digital is the publisher, but now Devolver Digital has a publishing deal with Microsoft that all their games go to Game Pass. And so if you're a PlayStation owner, you're solely PlayStation owner or solely Nintendo Switch owner, now you have to purchase Microsoft hardware, or maybe a console, maybe it's a console exclusive. Now you have to make some more decisions, and it causes more consumer confusion, along with all of the other services about which package do you need in order to play this game.
Yeah,
so
I think it does fracture the environment a little bit, just like the TV one is pretty fractured.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but outside of Nintendo, with Tetris 99 and games of that ilk, are there any games that are exclusive to Game Pass?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like every game on Game Pass can also be bought by itself, at least digitally, right?
It does seem that way.
Are there any? I mean, I guess like PS3 games will kind of be like that in this PlayStation Now thing, because it'll be streamed only, obviously, and you can't just like buy them in the store.
Can you buy those Amazon games separately from having a subscription to Luna? Like I assume you can.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't think so. I thought it was all like a subscription, like a Netflix, right? But I think it would be interesting, right? Like if Microsoft put out a game that you couldn't buy in its store and you could only buy by having the subscription to Game Pass, or that you could only play by having the subscription to Game Pass. I think that would be interesting. But I think, it's like, to my mind, it's like the only like new games I can think of are like these battle royale games on NSO, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not as informed on this as you guys, but I could see Amazon doing that just because they're a giant tech company that doesn't have a traditional foothold in the video game market, so they might try and mix that up. I could definitely see them doing that. I was just going to throw like a slightly different perspective on this, especially talking about from the consumer perspective. So people have pointed out before, like kind of this, like, I don't know, this ebb and flow and computing, where like back in the 70s and 80s, you had these, powerful for the time mainframes, and then you'd have like thin clients that would connect to them because it wasn't economically feasible to put a bunch of terminals like that up. And of course, I was pretty much restricted to like universities or, financial institutions or whatever it is. But essentially that model coming back. And then that's kind of what's going on.
Class warfare all the way down.
Well, I was going to say, I don't necessarily see it as being bad for the consumer, because you look at it right now where, you have like $700 consoles that you can't buy in a store. So that the manufacturers are kind of like going in a completely different direction of coming up with these really expensive, powerful consoles. And you're going to have an entire class of consumers who don't want that. Right. They just want to play their PS3 games from when they, 10 years ago, or they want to play, Halo 2, or just kind of those classic stuff, which you can play on a tablet now, So, I see that. I don't necessarily see as much of a negative as some of you guys do of it kind of like forcing them out, but kind of being really complementary to where the industry is going and the console gaming stuff is going. That it's a different way to play, to give people what they want. And it's not necessarily like the latest and greatest.
I had an interesting in-person conversation that just reminds me of. I was over at my neighbor's house, and they had some other friends over there who I did not know previously, and video games. We're talking about them, and they were like, just these new games. They were saying something like this, and I just blew my mind. Was like, because they were probably my age, so they probably grew up with video games, but they felt like new games weren't as good as old games, and I kind of feel the opposite way. Like, because at least in terms
well,
of,
you do a show where you play only old games and you hate all of them.
But I guess they were talking about like how the gameplay of old games was better, and I feel like gameplay has vastly improved, like to make games more accessible and easier. And yeah, there may be more mechanics, but I think it's just something that, kind of to your point of like, there might be a market of casual retro gamers that have nostalgia for old games but don't want to play more complicated, tricky new games or something like that.
I mean, that's what I think. I'm surprised that more people don't do what Nintendo's doing. You know what I mean? Like, that almost to me makes the most sense out of all of it, right? A lower price of entry, you know what I mean? You go in and it's all these games you remember from your childhood, right? For Nintendo, it's, obviously the expansion pack notwithstanding, that's 20, what is it? It's $20 a year or something ridiculous, right?
Yeah, that's the base price.
Yeah. And so it's like that for like all these Super Nintendo games is crazy. And it's like, that's kind of that's why I was a little bummed that the highest price tier of this PlayStation one is the one with all the retro games. Because I would love to just pay for that, not even pay for PlayStation Plus. I also don't have a PS5 right now, right? And I've got Game Pass, and so I don't feel a huge impetus for me to go out and get a PlayStation at the moment, because I've got way too many games just with that subscription service, right? That I could download right to my thing. But it's like, if it was just like a 20, 30, even like $50 a year for just this access to this massive backlog of PlayStation classics, like that seems to me like the smartest idea. And I was actually just looking up Amazon Luna, because it is like the one subscription service that I'm not super familiar with, and it's got its own full range of tiers, right? One of which is Ubisoft Plus. Jackbox Games is $5 a month for a subscription to that. But then there's also a retro channel that you can subscribe to on Amazon Luna. That's $5 a month, right? So that's clearly they're trying to get in with that more kind of casual market with all of that kind of stuff, right?
That segment of gamers who, Patrick, you talk about a lot about this, is like we grow up playing video games, and then there's some point in our lives where we have to focus on school or relationships or whatever, and like gaming as a hobby.
Hey, speak for yourself, man.
Yeah. Well, yeah, this is some of us, not everyone. Right. But gaming decreases significantly in people's lives, and there's always, sunsets and there's a sunrise. Maybe sometimes later they want to reinvigorate that youthful feeling of playing old games. Like, to me, I don't hear about this a lot. So, hearing this anecdotally is so super fascinating. And I wonder what the data is to support the type of player. I understand a player wants to play your Super Mario Brothers 3, your Super Mario World, your Last of Us, your big tentpole titles. But I wonder about some of the smaller games. So like, is there someone who's like really nostalgic for a game like Perfect Dark? Perfect Dark Zero on Xbox 360. Like these,
the first one, yes. The second one, no.
Well, yeah, but maybe there is, but it's just like a smaller minority of people who want to play these games that were important to them, but they're not available on these streaming services. But it's only like the big ones.
Yeah, I think that's a part of the reason that I think that a lot of people have issues with this, right? Is that they're inherently curated, and they're curated by the people who are putting up the money to pay for the licensing to put them on their service, right? So it's like, you know, like there's a lot of games that I want to play. Like I love emulation. I emulate a lot. You know, I've got a handheld emulator that I do a lot of stuff on. However, I don't emulate games that are in the Nintendo Switch online subscription service because it's more convenient for me to play it that way, right? But there are always going to be games. There are going to be games that I want to that will never be on it, right? Because either the rights holders no longer can be contacted. You know what I mean? They can't even like find somebody to pay the money to get it on their thing, or just normies have forgotten about this game. Nobody's going to port Fester's Quest to Nintendo Switch Online, but I loved Fester's Quest on NES, like as a kid, right? And so it's like, it's inherently always going to be problematic on like, and it's like the little niche stuff like that is always going to be kind of left out to die in our memories.
I'm pulling for Battletoads versus Double Dragon.
That actually might make it. We'll see. I think this might be Microsoft properties at this point.
I'm just generally always curious about how many people play. Like we're all nerds. We all host a Nintendo podcast. Yeah, you too, Matt Shirley. Like who I will dabble in these NSO games, but I rarely, with a few exceptions, will play the game all the way through. And I wonder if like what the how much time people really spend on these games. Anecdotally, it feels really low, and so maybe there's not a real big need. There's not a big audience for these retro games, but I want to be wrong.
I mean, I think that's kind of baked into it as the what's the word? I'm trying to think of it, but just like the it's disposable, right? Like you're not you can just you can play it for 2 hours one night and love it and then never go back to it. That's
what they're all banking on, right? They're banking on you subscribing to this thing and then forgetting that you even have it and just paying them automatically every month.
I got a gift card for the Switch eShop and I bought some games. And some of them are great and I got really into, but then like I bought like Knights of the Old Republic and I played it for like 30 minutes one night and I haven't touched it since, but that's probably just not the best format for that game. You know, it's like a PC RPG, but yeah, I mean, it's just anytime you get that, and it is a huge part of it is like the nostalgia factor. It was like, oh, in the moment, yeah, I really want to get it. Oh, it's $10. Of course I'm going to get it. And then, you know, it satisfies you for 2 or 3 hours or whatever it is. And then you never wanted to go.
And that's great. I love it when those situations happen. You get hungry for a game and it's available.
We've talked about retro games here for a bit, but I don't know that that's the future of subscription services, right? It's like, I think that's like a niche part of it. But really what they want is for new games to be included, right? And it's like more modern games. And it's like, and you know, that's what drives sales is like new games or more modern games coming out and being included in this stuff. It's like that you were talking about Netflix. It's like their original shit is what gets people to sign up for Netflix, right? And I think that we're running into a situation now that we've now run into with subscription services for visual media like movies and TV, which is originally it was like, oh, great, I'm cord cutting. This is saving so much money, right? I've got like everything I want on Netflix. Why would I need anything else? So now it's Netflix and Paramount and all this other shit, right? And now we're getting to a point where, you know, for a while, you know, I love Game Pass because like so many of the games I want are on Game Pass and I don't have to pay for anything else. But all of a sudden, if I'm paying for PlayStation Plus Premium, PlayStation, that's just a hard name to say, dude. They really need to fix that. PlayStation Plus Premium.
PSPP.
Anyway, PSPPPP, which is an emulator. Anyway, if I'm paying for Game Pass and that, and NSO. All of a sudden, I'm running into that whole, we're just
Yep.
recreating the cable subscription thing again, right?
You got to get
And
a
so it's like,
PPP loan
Yeah.
just to afford all the.
Plus
exactly.
Sega Channel,
And-
plus Satellaview.
yeah,
All
yeah,
aboard.
yeah. And they're bringing back Satellaview.
You're paying for
I got to get
more,
cable now.
yeah.
you're paying for like more than one brand new game a month, right? And
Yeah.
are you actually able to finish
No
one
way in fucking
new
hell.
game a month or whatever? You know what I mean? Like
No.
with that many subscriptions and stuff, probably not.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
But it's not, but it's different from a streaming thing where it's like, oh, I could feasibly see myself watching like at least a show on all of these things. But when you're talking about games, it's a little bit different, right? It's like there's no way I'm going to get my money's worth if I'm subscribed to every gaming service, right?
Yeah.
You know,
and some
like-
games, like you want to play, you know, a lot of like a multiplayer game, right? And like,
yeah,
and if that's one of your focuses, then is it worth having these subscriptions and stuff like that? It's not good value for somebody like that that's really
Yeah.
into, you know, that sort of game.
That's kind of what I'm the most curious about is what the adoption rates for all of these services are and who is getting them. Is it the hardcore gamers who are already spending a bunch of time and money on video games, or are more casual gamers getting involved and seeing it as a good value? I'd be really curious to know more about that.
I think it'll change a bit whenever Microsoft eventually releases whatever little Fire Stick, HDMI stick they're inevitably going to come out with, right? I think that's when they're really going to crack open the subscription service to Game Pass, right? Is when they've got something where the price of entry is like $50.
Is that in the
You know
works?
what I mean? It's been rumored for a long time. And there's been some leaks in their databases about like another Xbox SKU. And that's what it's kind of rumored to be. Yeah.
Gotcha. Can you play any of these services on like a Chromecast right now? Like, can you do Stadia?
Stadia
Okay.
is the only one. Yeah.
Just looking at pure numbers, Game Pass 25 million as of January, and then NSO as of November 32 million.
A lot
not
cheaper than
small
Game
beans.
Pass. Yeah.
Yeah. And that number also includes family members individually, I think, is the way they do it. So you could make an argument that it's a lot less than that.
Right. Yeah. Which I'm sure Microsoft would also count when they inevitably roll out their family plan
Yeah,
as
the
well.
number makes it sound better than it is.
Exactly.
kind of a
Yeah,
thing.
and like I'm sure we'll never hear PlayStation saying exactly how many people are extra members or premium members. They'll just say
Right, just
we have
say-
X number of PlayStation Plus
Plus,
subscribers,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why you do tiers, is to beef up those numbers. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the PlayStation number that is somewhere in the 30 million too, right? Like I feel like I saw that at some point a while ago or whatever, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
At any rate, yeah, I think we talked about this a lot in the news, and we went long there, and but we to kind of direct us towards maybe wrapping this conversation up. You know, are there any final thoughts on this? Like, you know, maybe we talk about Nintendo specifically, since we're the Nintendo podcast, of like, you know, they've been adding these DLC things to the expansion pack, really driving people towards this, which makes you think they're thinking about it as the future.
Yeah.
as well.
No
Do
one
you
else
think-
is really doing that, right?
Yeah, it's like day one DLC instead of day one games.
Mhm.
And you know, we've talked about, does this subscription model increase more DLC, and how does that get handled, and that sort of thing. And PlayStation wanting you to buy a new game but also subscribe. Is Nintendo wanting you to buy a new game but subscribe for the DLC? Is that going to be the model for the near future? It feels like it is for right now.
Yeah. I think we'll see more of that. It's interesting to see Nintendo like slowly adding value to theirs, as opposed to coming right out the gate with tons of value in order to get as many people as possible and then raising the price. It's just, they all have like different strategies that they're trying to hit. I think it's like kind of exciting in that it's like kind of making the gaming into a bit of a Wild West thing again, right?
Sure.
Where like everybody's just trying to figure this, they're trying to drive this train as they're laying down the tracks. You know what I mean? So it's kind of exciting to be a part of it, but it's also like, oh, I am just a test gerbil for these. You know,
Yeah.
I'm a guinea pig for these like big corporations to see
Yeah, for sure.
what's working. Yeah.
And
But
and
go
I
ahead,
am
Patrick.
laying out money that then just gets renewed without me thinking about it. Like I'm subscribed
Exactly.
to Apple Arcade right now, which is only $5 a month, but I don't think I used it much this last month.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, maybe I should have canceled it and re-signed up when I was ready to do it or something.
As somebody who is subscribed to at least 25 different OnlyFans, I feel your pain.
At least 25.
Look, I lost count years ago. And by that, I mean at the
pitch
start of the
them
pandemic.
on a
Does OnlyFans
Bundle
have
service.
family plans? If so, let me know.
That also sounds just as good
That's a
as
great idea.
PlayStation Plus Premium. OnlyFans family plans.
Yeah.
I was just
We
going to
could go
say
different ways.
the
Yeah,
different
yeah.
streaming services. It does kind of reflect the companies themselves, because like Nintendo's is much less expensive, and they're also banking on a lot of their own intellectual property being on there, so they don't have to
Right.
license anything. Which goes back to your point, David, earlier of like, why doesn't Sony do that? And just, well, like, because they don't publish a lot of their own games, right? So for like the PS1, they'd have to go back and license all that, and it'd become like such a huge ordeal.
There is a lot of third-party stuff though on NSO, right? But it's only ever from a few publishers. It's like Natsume and like Jalico and like, there's not a lot of the big publishers don't really want to do it because they can sell their own bespoke collections on the eShop, right?
Sure.
You're not going to see like a lot of Mega Man games because they've got the Mega Man collection, right? But it's like these like little more niche things. Like that's why we see so much weird shit on NSO, right? Like on the NES and SNES collections. And so it's like, I don't know. I do think it's like they're almost doing
Right.
it more than Sony is as well in a way, right?
But the appeal is going to be the first party games, right? Like it's what's going
Yeah.
to bring people in.
Exactly. That's a good point. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Any other last thoughts before we wrap this up? It's a big sprawling discussion. We've done our best. Anything anyone want to
I'm
bring
just
it
always
home?
curious about what will happen with Amazon. I mean, we talked about Luna briefly, but I mean, they're a giant conglomerate. And I only say
Boy,
that
bye.
because Sony and Nintendo both use AWS, Amazon Web Services, as their server infrastructure. And Microsoft obviously uses Azure. So what will Amazon's notorious for using data on their services and servers to sell product or use that data to influence other future Amazon decisions. So I'm always curious of what Amazon is. The company that I'm most scared about in the entire world is Amazon. What they will do with this data that they gather from NSO and from Sony, and how it influences the future value of services like Prime.
Yeah.
Amazon's going to grind up all physical game media and use it as propellant in their Blue Origin spaceships.
I know. Let's take us to space, Daddy Bezos.
Yeah.
We're just going to be eating, just video game gruel, just melted down. And
Exactly. Yeah. All ET cartridges all the way down.
Yeah, there's an Amazon like giant warehouse not too far from my house, and I drove past it today, and I looked at it, and I'm just like, man, that thing is fucking huge and scary. And there are millions of them, I'm sure, throughout the world. That's a little bit alarming.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, not about gaming subscriptions, but yeah. I think that does it, right?
Yeah, we gotta cut this off at somewhere because I could talk about this for like another 2 hours, to be honest. So it's probably
so
good to call
if there's anything we missed that you wanted to share with us, please, listener, viewer, share with us your thoughts on this topic. It's a big one, and I'm sure we'll come back to it with news and in time.
Yeah, and we talked before about how we still want to do an episode specifically on streaming, right? This was meant to be more of like a subscription service.
Yeah, they get a
thing as
little
well, so.
tied up, but
Yeah.
I was just going to say, this is interrupting, but this is how behind I am on all this. Now, my understanding is for the NSO stuff, can you play like Super Mario Kart online with other people?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And I can't believe I have not done that, because that is an amazing selling
Well,
point.
it doesn't work as well as you would hope. I'll tell you that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to ask, but
Yeah.
not important for the podcast.
Yeah.
But it is one of the benefits of it that they've added in online play games.
Yeah.
And maybe you can't play with people too far away from you. which defeats the purpose. But
or if you like audio that does not lag, then it's not for you.
Well, we'll call it there, and we'll take a break. And when we come back, we'll talk about some of the games that we've been playing recently. I think the main game I've been playing a little bit of a few different things, but mostly it's been Kirby and the Forgotten Land. And I guess this might be mild spoiler territory. And David, we've been talking about this throughout the episode a little bit, but I beat it. Like one might imagine, as Nintendo and many games are often do nowadays, there is a sort of beating the game, credits roll, and then a post game of sorts. And I have not beaten the post game, though I'm close to that. And I would say I'm pretty happy with the post game. I don't know, Matthew, it sounds like you've gotten through this too. So I'd be curious about your thoughts. It's kind of rehashing things, but kind of new. And I'll also just say that the ending of this game was a delight. I really enjoyed the lead up to the quote unquote end of the game. And it's been nice. It was nice that there was more content, and I think it's done in an okay way that I'm doing and enjoying playing through, but it's not like brand new, if that makes sense. I'm trying to like dance around spoiling things, but I don't know that I even need to.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm in the volcano area, which I guess is before this post game that you're talking about, right?
Yeah. You're almost there.
So I'm almost there. Yeah.
What you showed, there's a little bit left of the regular game, and then I'm at
47% or whatever that means. Certainly doesn't feels like higher than 47% to me.
Yeah, it is in terms of just number of levels left that you have. But yeah, I guess I would just say that I'm enjoying it. It's been fun to play with my kid, and we talked about this earlier too. I love the music. Waddle Dee Town, after you beat the game, has a way to listen to the music, and my son and I have sat there listening to some of the music. It's also got a nice little fun thing a band plays of Waddle Dees.
Dude, the Ice World has the best music in the game. Would you agree with that? It's all like jazz fusion.
It's pretty good. Yeah, I think so. Metro on Ice, I think, is pretty good. And just the main theme, and I know we talked about this, just like I love that it's got all these different versions. It really gets in your head, and but not in a too annoying of a way. I don't know. Yeah,
I'll go next. Kirby's great. The first question is, how did Kirby learn how to moonwalk?
He's always been able to moonwalk.
Always?
Yeah.
At those little...
He's been moonwalking since Kirby's fucking adventure for the Game Boy.
Those little end of the levels.
Or Dreamland.
Things, right?
Yeah.
That little animation.
Just a question. I thought I'd plant. Maybe you have an answer for me. I don't know.
Sorry if I shut you down.
No. Yeah, fuck you, David. This game's great. I think it really, I said this when we were doing our last episode, but it really snuck up on me, and the post game, the difficulty increases, and I was not prepared for it to be more difficult than kind of the story elements of the game.
Yeah, and not even just the bosses in the post game stuff. Some of it's again spoiling this. It's very, I mean, the whole game is like this, but it's very section based, right? And sometimes you get through a section and you're like, phew, like what I mean? Like,
So that's exciting for me. Yeah. I've only died once so far in this game. It was on one of the bosses. So I'm excited for a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, and the consequence of dying in the post game is also it's also higher too.
They kill you in real life.
Yeah, that's right.
Come to your house.
That's brutal.
Yeah.
Will Smith comes to your house.
It's a great
Kirby moonwalks into your front door, slaps you.
Just imagine, just like if there was ever like a real life Kirby and he just walked into your house, that is a horror movie.
It's
right
Eldritch
there.
horror. Yeah. It's terrifying. It asks more questions than it answers. Yeah.
I would go inside his mouth.
Yeah, I'll go inside Kirby's mouth. You play anything else, Matt?
Just a lot of that, and Halo, of course. They announced when season 2 is coming out for Halo Infinite, and it is both exciting. They made gameplay updates and have like a change log what will happen on, I think, May 3rd. It's like a Tuesday or something. So that's exciting. But we'll see. I think the Halo community is kind of burn out on 343's reaction to the community and kind of their silence. So,
any word on when Forge is dropping?
they said season 3, so that's probably fall.
They should have waited on that game.
Yeah, they should have increased the development time.
Yeah. They should have had a development update.
That's about me. David.
Yeah, I've you've been playing Kirby. I was playing Kirby right before I played this game that we call this podcast. This is the bad sentence. So I've been doing that. I'm not as far as you guys, but I'm getting there. And then what else? I played some of your game, Patrick Source, which nice. I was enjoying, but I need to go back and play it again. But I'm going to count that as a completed game for this year once I do complete it. And then, obviously you've been playing some Picross. I'm super excited. Chrono Cross is coming out this week on Thursday. So I'm looking forward to playing that. But other than that, I did start Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, which I started streaming this past Sunday on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/MonolithFiji. Great game so far. I basically in that first stream got through the prologue of the game and got the intro with like the amazing Bond song that is the theme song for that game. And so now I'm that'll be kind of my new streaming game that I'm playing for a while. So I'll be the day this episode comes out, Wednesday, I'll be doing another stream of that. I'll say right now, it's a lot more difficult than Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2. Something that I like is that the game's difficulties have gone up with every game. It's definitely just like a lot more to keep track of, like the radar is like old school 1960s. So you don't have like as clear of an indication of where everybody is. And it's just wider open areas and not just kind of hallways that are a little bit easier to hide in. So I'm finding the game to be a little bit more difficult in a way that's almost a little frustrating, but maybe I just need to get good at this kind of new method of sneaking around. But as far as like the story and the gameplay and all of the Kojima-ness of it, I am not disappointed so far with this game. Very much enjoying it, and I can't wait to play more.
Man, that Snake Eater, the theme song for Metal Gear Solid Snake Eater is like my favorite Metal Gear Solid song.
Oh yeah, it's great.
It's incredible.
Yeah. Kojima was like, I want a Bond song in this game, and I will not be taking questions at this time.
And we want the name of the song to be the name of the game.
Yeah. And at one point they're like, you can eat a bullfrog or something like that. Yeah. Matt Shirley, what have you been playing this week?
So like I said, or I think I said on air at the top of the show, I have been off of work for 3 weeks. So I have just been just gaming away, and I think I feel pretty confident saying 0 new releases, 0 games that have been released in the last 10 years. So let's see, I got Final Fantasy 9 on the Switch, which on the eShop, which it's pretty fucking cool that we finally got to a point where you can get like Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9, 10 on a Nintendo console, right? So that's been a joy to play through. I don't know, I'm probably only like 20-25% through at this point, but
that's my favorite Final Fantasy.
I loved it. I played that in high school. It's great. I love just the classic high fantasy aesthetics of it. I took the plunge a couple weeks ago. I did buy just a pretty great gaming PC. So I've been going through Elder Scrolls Oblivion, spending a lot of late nights getting into that. Some Age of Empires 3 as well on top of that.
Getting your money's worth out of that fancy new graphics card
Yes.
you got.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I'll get to Elden Ring eventually, but I'm going to finally beat, I got to beat Oblivion first, which I've been playing on and off for 15 years. Then I'm going to go to Skyrim, which I've never played in my life because I've never had a PC that was able to run it. And it's like, should I get this on the Switch? And it's like, I just want to save that for the PC. So yeah, that, and then just a bunch of odds and ends. I got Breath of the Wild, emulated on the PC, which looks pretty cool. Running 60 FPS on 2K monitor. It looks great.
The Wii U version, I suppose.
Yeah. And then a bunch of odds and ends. Just earlier today, I was digging into Secret of Mana, which I've never played before, which is really fun, at least so far. So yeah, I've just been kind of all of the above right now, as long as it is at least 15 years old.
Yeah. Well, what you got to do now is keep up the exact same amount of gaming you were doing before you had this job, while you also work this new job.
Good luck.
Yeah.
I will do it for you, David. For you.
Very good. Sleep. Just remember, kids, sleep is for the weak.
I think that does it then. Matt, Shirley, thank you so much for coming on and joining us.
Thank you for having me. This was a pleasure. It was very fun to do, and I'm just glad I did not get bullied about having a boring wall in behind me.
That reminds me. Your wall is so boring and dumb.
No, but thank you. And we love your wall.
I'm so...
I love your wall. I love your wall.
I think
I'm so glad it worked out, and anytime.
Matt, you started the slow process of Matt's taking over the podcast. So Patrick and David, you're gonna have to leave
Our
someday.
days are numbered.
Yeah.
We'll get Matt Hobby on next time.
Oh yeah.
Well, Stoney, you'll just have to bring back your Matt's convention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not to bring
Metallica.
back just
Metallica.
6-year-old
Yeah.
inside jokes.
Yeah.
But,
That's my favorite thing to do.
Well, thanks also to MilkyWay.co, does our website. Thanks to Corduroy for doing our music. And if you're looking for me, Patrick, online, I am PDYX.
Matthew on Twitter, MATHYOU.
I'm pretty much everywhere on the internet at Monolith Fiji. And what about you, Matt Shirley? Where can people find you online?
the Switch Headz Discord.
Nice.
Nice plug.
I think I'm still on Facebook. You can go to the Tigress on North Loop. I might be there.
There you go. You can find Matt Shirley in the meat space. That's me. And then if you'd like to find our show on social media, we are at Super Switch Headz on Instagram and Facebook, at Switch Headz on Twitter. We've got a website, www.switchheadz.com. And then you can also join our Discord that Matt was just talking about, and our Facebook group, both of which we will have links to in the description of this show, be it on YouTube or wherever. So join up our community. We've been having so many people join recently. It's been so nice to see people who have been listening to the podcast for a while finally join up in the community. It's just a delight. It never gets old to me. We love to have you. And then that's going to do it, everybody, for this show on subscription services. That was a huge topic. Went a little long there, but there was a lot to talk about. It was just a big news week. So glad to have been able to share this with you guys today. We're going to be back next week with an all-new episode, so make sure you tune into that. But otherwise, folks, let's stay safe out there. Let's be kind to one another. Let's be kind to ourselves. Try to move forward through this universe with love and peace and prosperity for all. With that in mind, we'll see you next week. We love you very much. Bye-bye.